Good evening, you guys. It's your boy Ben Mahari here, representing Mahari Nation Sports Podcast. Much love to the entire LDBC. Apologies for not doing the historical perspective video earlier this morning, though, because I was a little tired from work last night. I was just way too tired, and I couldn't do no videos, in my tired state. So, you know, forgot to do it today, but promise y'all, you're going to get a special treat tomorrow. I promise y'all, okay? But this is not about a sports video. This is actually more of a informative video, but it's actually more personal to me as you see the Eritrean icon on the top right-hand corner of your screen here. And what I'm going to talk about right here is basically Eritrea's fall from grace after they achieved their independence. Now, this year is 29 years since they gained their independence on May 24th, 1991, and we should be celebrating and probably taking homage to the fact that we were able to survive 30 years against a top nation like Ethiopia and fought through various obstacles to gain our independence. Right? We should have been we should have been one of those top African nations that was developing into the direction where we wanted to be. You know what I mean? A high developing African country, but what has happened is that now we've turned into the North Korea of Africa. And what I'm talking about is in the country, as most you guys don't know, it's pretty much an authoritative type of a landscape there, where there's no freedom. There's no freedom of speech. There's no law there. And there's literally like you feel like you're so handicapped in that country because you can't talk about anything or any political stuff because you don't know who's working for the government where they could probably take you to jail. And this is the worst part. They throw you in jail and there's no trial there. There's no judicial system there. There's literally no judicial system there. So therefore you go to jail with no trial, with no reason to fight for your freedom, and you get sent there, and you get sent to like these concentration camps or confinement areas where the military pretty much can torture you and basically strip you of everything that you got. And I've read a lot of stories where the prisoners would get hanged up in trees in front of the hot blazing sun. They would basically give you little clothing. There's no opportunities to use the restroom, nothing like that. You have to literally go outside and do it there. And there's been a lot of people who went through a lot of mental problems inside those prison areas. It's really bad there. And so what's also duplicated from this is another big thing: the huge spike of Eritrean refugees even after independence. Okay, now that accelerated, during the 60s and the 70s because it was during the war period where most of the Eritrean refugees escaped to Sudan at that time. But since then, it has continued on to the upward. As of now, from 2018, at least between 480 to 500 refugees, stay in Sudan, and it's really heartbreaking for me because we should have been a nation right now trending upwards, but we trained downwards. And even though we signed a peace treaty with Ethiopia last year, nothing has changed since then. Because the week after the peace agreement was signed, okay, and actually I take that back, it was 2018. The week after the peace agreement was signed, okay, Eritrea and Ethiopia opened up their borders, right? And Eritrean people who were tired of living in basically in hell or in slavery, they started fleeing to Ethiopia. And then after that, they closed the border again. Now, what I'm telling y'all is this, okay? A lot of them Eritrean refugees right now, they're basically there have been a lot of them that lived in there for almost a long time. There's some of them that just basically escaped from basically from military persecution, okay? And a lot of the children there, they don't know what it's like to be on the outside of the world. I remember watching a documentary in 2018. I remember watching one where there was this one particular woman, and I'm going to post a link to the documentary in the description box. She was basically seeing the refugees out there in those refugee camps for the first time with her father, and to see those children, you know, just living life, just accepting the fact that this is just normal life to them. without realizing that this is that living in a refugee camp is basically hell on earth. It's like these kids have so much optimism that is unparalleled. And what we're seeing right now is that there's a lot of different people. I'm saying Eritrean people that understand it and acknowledge it, but they're not doing anything to try to combat the issue there. And then there's the people there who are just plain ignorant that don't want to accept the fact of what's going on around here. Now, this has nothing to do with that, but it broke my heart to see to see what it's like, from that perspective. Now, if I would have went down there, I probably would have not contained myself because these kids. I even remember there was this one kid that they basically was asked, would you want to go to America or would you want to live different country than here in Sudan? And they most of them said no. They kind of feel like that this is like home to them. And the bad part is that a lot of them, even though if they pass their schooling in the refugee camps, a lot of them are not Sudan, citizens. And unfortunately, most of them won't have the opportunity to advance their education, which is something that needs to be done if we're going to elevate even further. And I try to do my best to try to highlight the issues on my own social media platforms, but as of this moment, I'm doing my initiative to do so about it right now. Okay. Um, tomorrow tomorrow night in place of basketball conversations, I'm going to discuss about more in depth about the Eritrean, refugee situation. And there's a documentary uh, that I'm going to post in the link in the description box that I would like for you guys, to have a look at. And it's really, it was basically a built up documentary that took a lot of years in the making to build. And it really illustrates from a firsthand experience about how these refugees live every day, and how most of them live most of their lives there, with little to no medical care. Food can be scarce at times, and you really are putting yourself at risk because a lot of the human traffickers from those countries can basically go into the refugee camps, kidnap all the women and children, and basically can do whatever they want to them. And I'm not going to tell you all the graphic details right here on YouTube because of the YouTube community regulations. But you guys understand what the heck I'm talking about. All you gotta do is just Google it up yourself. But I'm gonna discuss about this a little bit further in detail, and then basically tie into what we can do to try to bring more awareness to it. Because the sad part is Eritrea is an African country, and a lot of people do not care about what goes on in Africa. And it's very, very sad to see. We care about what's going on in this country right now for basic social injustices here. I agree with that 100%, and I'm behind it. But we cannot forget our homeland in Africa. You know what I mean? We cannot forget that because that's where our roots came from. All right, and I'm not neglecting my Eritrean roots, not one bit. You know what I mean? And I want to go through this in a little bit in depth with you guys, so that way you guys have a bit of a broad knowledge about what's going on in that side of the world, and seeing how lucky we are in America, even though everything is totally messed up and things could get better. But in sincerity, we're living pretty much a life in a sense than what these people are going through right now. And I wouldn't trade my life in America for a thing. You know what I mean? Instead of living what they're living through. You know what I mean? I can only imagine the stories that are gonna come out. But what I'm gonna do in the day in pretty much the whole evening up until tomorrow night, I'm gonna watch some documentaries, get some notes in, and put some stuff together. And I'm gonna introduce to you a documentary that I saw in 2018 that I'm gonna rewatch again. But it's actually a really good one because it really was a documentary that this lady did an excellent job illustrating about her life and how she became an activist pretty much out of the blue after meeting a refugee during a quick date, I would assume. And so be prepared for a lot of emotion, a lot of tears, and you're gonna be in basically for a huge roller coaster from the things I'm about to tell you and about to describe to you. So be prepared for that. But I will see you guys tomorrow for that show. So if you are interested, feel free to come on over and make sure to keep the comments respectful. And if you have any questions about anything that I'm talking about for tomorrow night, post the link in the description. Post your questions in the comment section, or you can discuss it in the chat tomorrow night, though, guys. But be prepared for a lot of different emotions that are going to come out here tomorrow night. All right, that's why I'm bracing myself for the opportunity on this. So this is what I'm pretty much going to do tomorrow night in place of basketball conversations. But be on the lookout for other videos I'm going to do throughout the weekend. All right, peace.